what sort of led you into becoming an expert in your area of expertise?
Well, what led me to become an expert in decision making and disaster avoidance is actually seeing my parents making some really bad decisions when I was a kid. And they were both people who went with the typical decision making strategies that lots of entrepreneurs pursue, which is going with your gut, follow your intuitions. When you feel something is right, you do it. Unfortunately, very often, what they felt was right clashed with each other. So they felt different things were right. So for example, my mom liked to buy nice clothing. And my dad was kind of a cheapskate. So she'd go out and she'd buy a $50 sweater, and then she'd come back home and my dad would yell at her and say sweaters should never cost anything over $20. So they had a lot of fights like this over small, dumb things that already as a kid I saw weren't healthy for their relationship, and that impacted me when I saw them yelling at each other naturally. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst was this one big fight when my dad, so he was a real estate agent, so he had a salary that was variable based on commissions. And there was about a 6-month period where he made quite a lot of money. Unfortunately, he told my mom that he made very little money. He hid the money. He invested in buying an apartment on the side and leased it out to some people. Well, eventually she found out in a couple of years, and it was a huge big blowout fight, very big. She felt that she couldn't really trust him after he did that, after this kind of money move. He probably didn't trust her in spending the money wisely, right? But anyway, they actually separated for a while, and I lived with my mom, didn't see my dad for a long time, long periods, so that was pretty hard for me as a kid. And that made me realize that my parents made really terrible decisions. My parents weren't gods, and that adults made terrible decisions. And so it made me really fascinated with how we make our decisions and why we make our decisions so badly, why nobody teaches us to make good decisions. And as I grew up, I came of age around the dot-com boom, when in 1999 tech entrepreneurs, including some medtech entrepreneurs, healthcare tech entrepreneurs, were partying like it's 1999. Companies like Pets.com, Boo.com, Webvan were booming. And in just a couple of years, when I was 21, 2002, they all went bust. They all went bankrupt. It was terrible. Lots of people lost their life savings. I mean, billionaires who were very prominent billionaires lost a lot of their investments. And these health tech entrepreneurs, other tech entrepreneurs, including health tech, they went from heroes to zeros. They were on the front pages of the Wall Street Journal for the right reason in 1999, for all the wrong reasons in 2002. And that was an intentionally bad decision making. I mean, they didn't set out to lose money. They didn't set out to cause people to lose their life savings. But there were some people who really had maliciously bad decision making around that time. I'm talking about Enron, WorldCom, Tyco, these companies which chose to hide their losses from the dot-com bust using fraudulent accounting methods, scamming investors. A lot of the investors were employees of these companies who lost their life savings and retirement savings. So that was pretty terrible. And the thing is, the decision-making of Bernie Ebbers and others was really horrendous because, I mean, what did it buy them? A year more, 2 years more when they were getting their bonuses? And then they were in the front pages of the Wall Street Journal in handcuffs. So that was pretty terrible decision-making. I mean, they went to jail for many, many, many years, and they lost so many opportunities to make much more money than one more year of bonuses. And so that was pretty terrible decision-making on their part from any perspective. And so looking at that, I saw how terrible decision-making took place in the very topmost leadership of our economy. And there were pretty terrible political decisions, but we're not talking about that here. So we're talking about economic decisions, and that was what was really fascinating for me. So I decided to study this topic. I was always cared about addressing suffering. That was always a value set for me, kind of being utilitarian, helping people address suffering, and I saw that the biggest difference I can make was in learning and helping others make better decisions, myself and others, of course. So I went into studying this, and I eventually started training in this. I became a trainer, a consultant, coach. I've been doing this training, consulting, coaching for about 20 years. I have a company called Disaster Avoidance Experts, which does this training, consulting, coaching. Now, about a few years into my training, consulting, coaching, I realized I really needed more professional education in this and really higher level education. So I decided to study cognitive neuroscience and decision-making and behavioral economics. And I went into academia. I got a PhD and I did research on this topic. I was a professor for Ohio State for 7 years, researching and teaching these topics. So looking at how do we actually make our decisions, how does our brain, various components of our brain, this is really cutting edge research. Stuff that's really coming out, just how our brain works and how does our brain push us to make certain decisions because of how it's wired. And so that's what I was researching. And that has all been brought together in my newest book, Never Go With Your Gut, How Pioneering Leaders Make the Best Decisions and Avoid Business Disasters. The cutting edge research in cognitive neuroscience and behavioral economics, together with my experience over 20 years coaching, consulting for lots of various companies, including the healthcare industry is one of the industries I focus on.